Hello, welcome to week 2. Hope you've had a great first week of this class. I appreciated all of your video introductions. It was really great to get to meet you and hear about what you're doing and all the great experiences that you bring. We're a very diverse group. I was writing down as each of you spoke your years of experience, what you teach, and those kinds of things. And it was great to see how varied we are, that we've got different levels of years of experience, different levels of what we teach, different backgrounds, and I think that's helpful so that we can learn from each other. I was also encouraged to read your post this week about the privilege walk and how several of you commented that it was a eye-opening experience, and it was that way for me too. I didn't think of myself as privileged until I did that for the first time a couple of years ago and really saw how many areas of my life I am privileged. And so just a great perspective to remind us of our students and what they bring to our classrooms. So we're going to jump into Module 2, and just wanted to highlight a couple of comments that some of you made that I thought were really insightful this week, and I'll do this periodically throughout the course just to kind of highlight some things that caught my attention. One of the things I liked that Christina mentioned was all students need to be given the same opportunities. Students don't make the choice about their environment, and everyone should be granted the best, especially while attending the public school system. That really resonated with me because I've spent my whole career in the public school system, as many of you have, and that's nothing against private schools, but what I like about public schools is that we serve all, and that we have to find ways to meet the needs of a very diverse student population, because it doesn't matter what criteria we set, we're going to serve all students, and I love that about public schools. I also thought Carlos had a great perspective in talking about how his experience and how his teachers had gotten him to where he was today. And it really resonated with me when he said, I believe that I share many experiences with student populations at my school, and this makes it even more important for me to educate my colleagues about the experiences and challenges that many of our students face. And just having that perspective of being able to support our colleagues and support ourselves and understanding the diversity and the challenges that our students face. And then Libby, I thought, did a great job in posting how important intentionality is. And of course, none of us that get into education seek to discriminate against our students or create an environment that is not culturally responsive. But I think what Libby emphasized here is if we only respond to them based on the cultural norms and experiences that we know, we're doing them a great disservice. So we have to build that understanding that we have, build that understanding of their perspectives. And there were so many of you had great posts about how you have done that. So I appreciated all of your comments, and am looking forward to continuing to see how our conversations go. This week you have a couple of different videos. The text talks about universal design for learning, and this is a topic that's really near and dear to me. I've spent a lot of time on UDL, and one of the things that there's a couple of videos here that will talk about, give you some background on UDL, but we'll talk a little bit more about it in the coming slides. But part of what UDL challenges us to do as special educators is, so many times when you think about what we have done, think about how you've accommodated tests in the past. Perhaps you've written up your test, and then after the fact, you figure out, how do I accommodate it for students with disabilities? And maybe you have, if you're a general ed teacher, maybe you've had a special ed teacher that has helped you figure out what accommodations a student might need. What UDL emphasizes is this quote: maybe we just need to change the environment. Maybe instead of writing a test and then adapting it after the fact, maybe we need to change the way we do the test. And so I'll show you an example of that in just a minute. Then there's also a video that talks about RTI and MTSS. We'll spend some time talking about that in this video as well. So UDL, as I mentioned, the example of a test, UDL came out of architecture. And the focus was, if you think about buildings that we accommodated for ADA requirements. So you might have a building and then off to the side is a ramp that we built. And what they found was that that was really expensive to build a ramp off to the side to accommodate individuals with disabilities, and it wasn't necessarily the most effective. And so in architecture, one of the things they found was that they would try to embed the accommodation into the original design. And so these stairs are a great example. They could have easily built a ramp off to the side, but as opposed to doing it that way, they thought, let's embed the ramp into the stairs. Let's make this a more accommodating environment. And that's really what UDL is all about. We've spent so much time accommodating students with disabilities or exceptionalities, English learners. After the fact, why don't we rethink this? Why don't we figure out how can we make our curriculum and our instruction more flexible from the design phase and meet more learners? More learners needs. Another great example of universal design is closed caption on TVs. So you think about that's originally intended for individuals who are deaf or hard of hearing. But how many times are you at a restaurant or you're at the airport and you can't hear the TV, but you're reading the closed captioning, at the gym on the treadmill, reading the closed captioning? Those were intended for individuals with disabilities, but non-disabled individuals benefit from that as well. The same thing with ramps built into the sidewalk. Those were accommodated for wheelchairs, but if you're a mom pushing a baby in a stroller, you really appreciate that those ramps are there. So while it's designed for individuals with disabilities, it has a much broader range. And that's what we found with assessments and instruction as well. You might design some of these accommodations for students with disabilities when in all reality, they really benefit all learners. And that's what universal design for learning is all about. There's three components of UDL, and it really gets to flexibility. Multiple means of engagement. How are we engaging our learners? How are we keeping them motivated, interested in our learning, in what we're presenting to them? That's an important part of UDL, and just part of what I think we do as good teachers is figuring out how to keep students engaged. Secondly is then representation. That's really getting to that assessment, that's really getting to how we're presenting the information. How are we reaching students in different ways and planning for diversity in the design of our curriculum and our instruction? That's the key, that we know students are not going to all learn from sitting in rows and listening to us teach in the front of the classroom. So how do we present the information in a way that's more flexible and more meaningful? And then finally, the action and expression. That's how are students showing us what they know. So, in most cases, I think most of us have gotten away from the old tests that you and I may have taken. Sometimes there's a place for that, but sometimes there are different ways that we need students to show us what they have learned in more flexible ways, more accommodating ways that are far more effective than the standard tests that we may have taken before. So that's a quick snapshot of UDL. You'll get some more about that in the two videos. They're fairly short, that go into more detail from some experts in the field of UDL. One of the other things that is talked about in your text this time is IEPs and 504s. So there's a link in Canvas to a document that I like just because it really differentiates between the two. 504 has a wider umbrella than IDEA or for an IEP. So when I was a special ed director, one of the things I would tell people is a lot of times people think a 504 carries less weight than an IEP, and I understand why people say that. But in some ways, a 504 plan is really a broader plan and has some, in some ways, even more legal protections than an IEP does. So if you're challenged on a 504, that can involve the Office of Civil Rights. That can involve a pretty intensive review of your policies and procedures and how you handle individuals with disabilities. And so I think sometimes in schools we don't think 504s are as important as IEPs, but they really are, continue to be a legal document and can be pretty far-reaching in what they offer to students. 504 eligibility is more broad, and in most cases a 504 does require a medical diagnosis, although there is some flexibility there, but they are both legally binding documents, and so that's really important. as we are leaders in our buildings and supporting our staff in implementing both IEPs and 504. So there's far more information in Canvas that kind of outlines the differences between these two documents and what they do for our students. I almost didn't post this because so many of you have so much experience in English learner and in supporting English learners. If you don't, there are documents in Canvas, and they're specific to Indiana, and the only reason that is because I looked for some Illinois resources, and I couldn't find any, but Indiana was a little bit more accessible on their website, and I would imagine they would apply across both states. So if you have a lot of experience in English learners, I don't know that you need to spend time looking at those documents in Canvas. If you don't have as much experience in that, then I think these might be beneficial. I also wanted to talk about RTI and MTSS. Again, one of the videos this week goes into more detail. I'm sure you're familiar with RTI and tiered supports. One of the things that we're doing a big push on in Indiana is multi-tiered system of supports and trying to bring various initiatives together and really seeing that MTSS is the broad umbrella. So when you think about RTI, PBIS, some of those different things, thinking about how are we supporting across these tiers and really aligning our supports. And I think the videos do a nice job of explaining that. And you're all familiar with the 80-15-5 pyramid and thinking about different tiers of supports. I think the piece, and this is talked about in the book as well, but just to emphasize it, when we look at our data, if 80% of our students aren't being successful in tier 1, then it really is a core instruction issue. One of my favorite quotes is, "You're not going to be able to intervene your way out of bad instruction." So don't spend time adjusting tier 2 and tier 3 in a data meeting if 80% of your students aren't being successful in core in the gen ed classroom. We spend a lot of time getting into tier 2 and tier 3, and really we need to be focusing on tier 1. And that's important whether you're in general ed or special ed. So the week ahead, you've got 2 chapters that you're reading this week. The group assignment, which I talked about in Module 1, is available and due Thursday. So if you haven't already coordinated your time to get together with your partners, be sure to do that soon so that you're ready for Thursday. Discussion post is due Wednesday with responses due Sunday of next week. And then you've also got a synthesis paper that's due on Sunday as well. So I look forward to your work. And that is all I have this week. Let me know if you have any questions, and I hope you have a great week. Thanks.